Hey, good afternoon, everybody out there. It is Wednesday afternoon. That is when we talk Missouri football. I mean, let's be honest, we talk Missouri football every day on PowerMizzou, but today we do it on YouTube. Fancy for you guys. We're going to bring Jarod Hamilton and my friend Tim Fitzgerald from Go Power Cat into the show momentarily. But before we do that, what we always do is ask you guys to support the people that support us. Our shows this year are brought to you by James Carlton State Farm in St. Louis, Missouri. He can take care of all your insurance needs in the state of Missouri and the state of Illinois. They really focus on teen drivers. They've got great programs if you have a teenage driver, which look, that's a stressful enough thing on its own. You don't need to be spending more money than you need to. So get in touch with James. His information is going to be scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can see his Facebook page, his web page, and his phone number across the bottom of the screen throughout the show. If your insurance costs you a leg and an arm, I should say, you call James Carlton State Farm. He's also going to, if you tell him you heard about him on this show, he's going to give you a quote, and then he's going to donate $20 to Missouri's NIL Collective, Advancing Missouri Athletes, just because you called him and he's a big Missouri fan and he wants you to do that. So we got a couple guys to add into the show. Right now, I do not see. Oh, there's Jarod. So I can now add Jarod onto the show. Jarod Hamilton, and look, it's like the magic of internet TV. We've now got three of us on the screen. There is my friend Tim Fitzgerald from Go Power Cat. Fitz, the last time we previewed a Missouri-Kansas State game, they were both in the same conference. We were, I think, on the same team at that point. I might get in trouble for having you on my show. I don't know. But neither of us had very much hair at that point either. So at least one thing hasn't changed.
No, a lot has changed. The strangest thing that has changed was Colin Klein was the quarterback in that game, and now he's the offensive coordinator in this game. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody asked me today, like memories of Missouri, Kansas State. I was like, look, I go back to Corby Jones versus Michael Bishop. So I've got some memories of this series, and we'll get into talking about it a little bit. But just we read some things over the last couple of days that Chris Kleiman is kind of trying to build up that angle to his team. Eli Drinkwitz took the opposite approach. He goes, look, I don't think many of these guys know that much about it. It's just a game. I mean, what do you think the fan base is this any bigger than any other non-conference game for K-State fans?
Yeah, for the fans, certainly. And welcome to the Olds, because this week's Olds line is, if you remember watching these games between these programs, because the players don't. I mean, the players were in grade school. And, most of K-State's coaches, I'm sure it's the same with Missouri. We're not affiliated with the program outside of Colin Klein. And so there aren't a lot of memories in the Veneer complex, but they're spending a lot of time making sure everyone knows that this game's important to the fan base, not just as a rivalry, but also, let's be honest, recruiting in the Kansas City area will be impacted possibly by the outcome of this game.
Okay. I think the big thing I want to know going into this game is that 3-3-5 defense is pretty unique. It's not something Missouri has seen. Can you kind of tell us, like, what's unique about that defense and why does it cause so many problems? I think I read something like last year they allowed only 21 points per game or something like that. That was the lowest amount since 2003. So what are the type of problems it presents?
Well, what's interesting about it is Chris Kleiman, nor defensive coordinator Joe Klanderman, had ever run this defense before until last year. And after a couple of seasons in the Big 12, they realized they needed to be a little bit more nimble on defense and a little more flexible in how they did things. And they have gone to this now, and they are building upon what they did last season. Working at home is great with dogs. They seemed a lot more comfortable in it coming out of camp than they were probably at any point last year. In fact, in the middle of last year, they tried to get a little more advanced in it. They struggled with it against some really good competition. So they backed up and went back to the basics and were really effective the rest of the year. So I think we might start seeing some wrinkles we didn't see last year, but it has allowed them to move guys like Felix Anyudike-Uzama around. Daniel Green at linebacker can come at you. Khalid Duke is someone that people aren't really talking about because he missed last year with an injury, but he was supposed to be the rush in last year before blowing a knee. He's now at that Sam linebacker spot, so he kind of lines up where he wants to line up in pass packages. It is difficult to defend, but the downside, or difficult to handle, But the downside of it is it does make you lighter. It does make you a little bit less physical at the point of attack, although this is a pretty physical defense. But you're essentially pulling a defensive lineman off the field for a safety or an outside linebacker.
Wait, Gabe, real quick, I have a follow-up question to that real quick.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it slipped my mind. As soon as I said that, Gabe, I was thinking about this whole time. I'm going to come back to it.
Okay.
You're good. You're good. Well, hey, this is live TV. That's the beautiful thing. But you see, Fitz,
I'm glad it
this
happens
is why
to the young people. I'm so glad.
Right. Yeah. It's not just us. But the reason we have you on is you can pronounce Felix's whole name. This entire week, every show I've done, I'm like, Felix has 2 other names, but I can't pronounce them, and I don't.
We call him King
so
Felix.
He just Felix to me. But I'm interested. I mean, you said he'd never run that style of defense, but it's interesting. K-State has now become, kind of the same style of football that Bill Snyder almost became known for, at least in his second go round, which is, hey, they're not going to make mistakes. The game's a little bit slow. They're not going to put up 40, but you're not going to put up 40. So I'm curious, is that like a K-State thing that Kleiman adopted when he came, or was that the kind of coach Kleiman was before he got there?
It's hard to tell because at North Dakota State, they were so much better than everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they were trying to possess the ball and run the clock, they'd score. So it just almost wasn't fair how much better they were. They were the Alabama plus at the FCS level. Not necessarily. And it's just kind of evolved that way as a way to manage the game. But what is interesting is Colin Klein, one of the things he's come in and attempted to do was alter the tempo. They want to get about 10 more plays on the field a game. They don't want to go breakneck like some teams do that, are just running constantly. That's not what they want to do. They want to be able to speed up and slow down to help manage the game and the scoreboard. So if K-State gets ahead, they'll slow down. But if they need to, continue to run their offense, they can even speed up a little bit. But they're trying to find a median in there. But we've joked all season long that just when you thought Chris Kleiman and Bill Snyder weren't alike, we're finding out they're a hell of a lot alike. I mean, they have so many things that they do kind of behind the scenes, like gamesmanship. K-State didn't put hardly a thing on the field last week against South Dakota. They got to a quick lead, and they went and got 2 double scoops of Bill Snyder vanilla offense. So it's there are some similarities here, even though outwardly they are much different people. How they handle the program in that locker room, it's about family and team and fitting the offense, defense, and special teams into one cohesive grouping.
I remember my question now, guys. So my question with that 3-3-5 is, well, I know like for the 4-2-5 that Blake Baker's running, it's pretty aggressive. He's trying to run some different type of blitz packages. Is that kind of the same with the 3-3-5? Are they trying to do some exotic blitzing from the linebacker positions, or even having one of those extra secondary players come up and do some blitzes off the edge or something?
Yeah, all of that. And we didn't see any of that in the week 1. They just pretty much just straightforward rush the quarterback. But they'll probably add a lot of that in. We expect Sean Robinson to be back for this game. Ironically, he's moved from, he's gone quarterback, cornerback, safety. Now he's a linebacker. And so they'll find a spot for him eventually. He's expected to be back. He was out last week. They have 3 new safeties behind him, so that's interesting. For the most part, they're all transfers. They will line up and attack you from different angles. Keep an eye on number 2, Kobe Savage. There's never been a better named safety in the world. I'm glad he wasn't named Kobe Kind because this kid is a savage hitter, and I think you will see him coming on some blitzes off the edge. But they'll attack you from all different angles. They'll bring guys at you different ways. And if you want to double team Felix, the other guys in that line, Eli Huggins did a swim move on the center and went right at the quarterback last week. And Nate Matlack, another Kansas City kid on the other end, had a sack himself. So it's a pretty effective group.
Talking to Tim Fitzgerald at Go Power Cat. And guys, I do want to invite you, comments, questions, whatever, let them build up in the queue. After we're done talking to Fitz, we'll certainly get to those on the second part of the show. But one of the interesting parts about the transfer portal now is that these guys who used to be on the other side are now on your team, right? And you might have to change opinions about them. I'm curious. And look, we didn't find anything out about Adrian Martinez in week 1. He threw 15 passes for 53 yards. But I'm curious because his reputation from the outside, like even we were talking about our game preview before you came on, and Jarod said one of the key matchups is Adrian Martinez versus himself, because he has this reputation for he's going to put up yards. He's going to move the football. He's also going to pick a pretty bad time to give it away. So, to me, the approach defensively for everybody that plays Kansas State is, look, we're not going to go home and have lost because Deuce Vaughn beat us. We're going to go home and have lost because we forced Adrian Martinez to do it, and he did. Is that what you think K-State expects to see most of the year?
Certainly that's what South Dakota chose. They backed up. They had deep safeties. K-State didn't want to throw it deep. They didn't want to put that on film. And honestly, going back to what you said, I don't think K-State wanted him to turn the ball over in any way. They wanted him in no peril to turn it over and to have that echoing through his brain. So they were very, very safe in how they called plays, ran plays. And again, they got up very quickly. They scored a 75-yard touchdown on the first play. Deuce scored on another perimeter run. I think they had 3 perimeter runs in the entire game, and they scored touchdowns on all of them. And then they had a block punt, which is so K-State for a touchdown. Right. So they got just so dry at it. But they didn't want Adrian to have a bad experience. They didn't want him to turn it over. He did accomplish something remarkable in the game, though. He completed 11 of 15 passes, had no turnovers, and he had a quarterback rating of 17, which I didn't know was possible. I didn't really know that you could have a winning quarterback with no turnovers have a 17 as his rating. But
hey, you don't know what 3.4 yards an attempt will do to a guy, huh?
I know. So there's nowhere to go but up, maybe. But yeah, if you're Missouri, you want to try to put him in decision making that he has failed at. But I got to say this: I went back and watched a lot of film of him in Nebraska, and it looked like a kid that felt like he carried the weight of the entire Red Nation on his shoulders. It looked like a kid who had been tasked with making the big play every time they needed a big play. And that's a lot to ask. And he was also asked to do it behind a really crappy offensive line. And what we saw last week, it looked like a guy who's never had a pocket in which to operate, a guy that didn't know how to manage the pocket. That's my concern with Adrian more than anything. It's learning the nuance of when to stay in the pocket, when to run, when to, maybe just kind of take the sack or throw the ball away, because it's not on him. You have Deuce Vaughn, who is an incredible threat, not just running the ball, but boy, he's awfully dangerous when they decide to throw it to him too, because he's a matchup nightmare for a defense if you end up with a linebacker on him. So I'm just really excited to see a little bit more from this offense, because we saw crap. We didn't see anything last week.
Tim, the question I got for you next is about that offensive line that Adrian Martinez will be behind. I checked yesterday with their PFF grades, at least, and 9 of the 15 best offensive players that recorded more than 15 snaps were offensive linemen. Now, I've seen that guard Taylor Portier is out for the season with an ACL injury. Can you talk about how big of a loss that is, but also kind of what they have, replacing him and how they'll fare without him?
Yeah, I mean, life is so unfair. I know that myself, but Taylor missed all last season with a left knee injury that he rehabbed. And in his first game, 6th possession of the game, he blows out his right knee. So he's going to go through it all over again. Now, look, they've had an extra interior guy. Hadley Panzer is a redshirt freshman that they like an awful lot, was possibly going to take over at center from Hayden Gillum, a former walk-on who's really played surprisingly well, to be blunt. And now they'll just move Hadley into that guard position. But they were able to move Cooper Beebe, their top offensive lineman, a true NFL guy, from left tackle, not a natural spot, into left guard, because they finally had someone take over that left tackle spot in KT Levinston, who's a veteran who needed to reform his body and get faster and more explosive, and he has. So this is a really good offensive line. The strength of this program under Chris Kleiman has been that offensive line under Connor Riley. And he continues to, shape it and form it in what he wants to see from guys, which is really an athletic bunch, and they get after you. They are physical, mean, and they can get out there and run and pull.
Missouri fans have been pointing to this game it's really almost it's not this game alone. It's this and at Auburn in week 4. It's like you're going to the free throw line tied with no time left on the clock, and you got to make one of those two. Because if you don't make one of those two, your season can't be what you want it to be. Now, second one always gets a little easier when you make the first one, right? So Missouri,
Right.
this is the one on the
point.
slate, but this is a huge swing game for Missouri season. What is it for K-State? Is it that as well?
Yeah. Well, week 4 is Oklahoma, at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So it's very similar in that this is a big game. K-State's early schedule is very interesting because week 2 is Missouri, week 4 is Oklahoma, week 6 is Iowa State, which has evolved into the rivalry game for K-State since KU is only a part-time participant in college football.
Wait, when did they upgrade to part-time?
Well, Lance Leipold's got him to part-time now. They actually beat an FCS team, so we're going to give him part-time. So those every other week games are just huge for the program, just enormous. And then they run into a gauntlet in the second half, but that's okay. The Big 12 is hyper-competitive. But, yeah, same way. You win this game, you don't want to say afford to lose to Missouri, or excuse me, in Oklahoma, but it becomes more palatable at that point if you come out of the first 4 games at 3-1.
Can you kind of talk about some exploits that Missouri can, try to take advantage of K-State? I mean, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like they're good and loaded everywhere, but every team has its flaws. So what are some things that, K-State can work on?
Well, I'll be interested to see what K-State does against a more effective passing game, because South Dakota typically can throw the ball, but they had a lot of drops. And honestly, it skewed the stats, making K-State's defense look even better than it was. There was just a lot of inefficiency on the part of the Coyotes last week. So trying to just mix the run and the pass together, I think, is really important for Missouri. You can't get too predictable against this defense. I'm telling you what, if Missouri wants to be successful, they better be successful on first and second down, because third and long for opponents this year for K-State with this group of pass rushers led by Felix is going to be brutal. I mean, they're going to come after you. So having success early will be important. But K-State also last year had problems on third down, and they're trying to get a little bit better in that area. So we'll just see how that plays out.
Tim, last thing for me, I just want to ask you, what's the atmosphere going to be like? And we've got a viewer wanting to know. I mean, I think it's sold out, but walk-up tickets. Is there any way to get in the stadium?
Yeah, I hear there's standing room only tickets available as of earlier this week. But this game sold out pretty much immediately in terms of fixed seating after single tickets went on sale to donors. So it's going to be a big crowd. It was a sellout for South Dakota, which was a positive sign. I think there's the COVID bounce back is happening. We're beginning to see people go back to the stands. It looked like Missouri was pretty darn crowded too. So that's really fun. The big storyline as we head into this game at Kansas State is a chant by the student body that I will shorten the first word. It's FKU. And they're doing it to the Wabash Cannonball now, which is, a favored school tradition. So there's a big pushback to try to stop it. But I've warned people that this is not the game to stop it, because if the students start chanting FKU, the visiting crowd will join in.
They'll join in. Right.
Yeah, it won't help at all. It won't help with the Missouri fans just saying, yeah, we agree. We're going to go along with this sentiment. But it's going to be a great atmosphere. I kind of, as an old, I'm happy the game's at 11 so we can get it out of the way and go about other stuff. I've done a 180 on that as I've aged. But it's going to be a beautiful day in Manhattan. Might get a little warm, but this is going to be fun. I hope this isn't the only time these two programs play because I like it. I like this revisiting these old rivalries an awful lot. Mm-hmm. And K-State's got some games on the schedule in the future that, if the Big 12 does expand west, will become conference games, and they're going to have to find some new non-conference opponents, including Arizona and Colorado.
I just want to say that answer brought back some really bad memories of me, like driving home with Wabash Cannonball, just like ringing in my head after having been in Bramlage Coliseum. So,
yeah, they did it in the pregame. The students erupted with the FKU chant, and they didn't play Wabash again in the entire game. So it was a little odd. They got to sort this out. They got to figure this one out.
It's a regional thing. They started playing Mr. Brightside here last year at sporting events, and there's a break in the lyrics where the students just fill it in with the same chant. So, enemy of my enemy is your friend is how it goes around here. Right?
Exactly.
Jarod,
you got anything to finish up with, man?
I mean, it's going to be interesting for me because I was born not too far from there. So I'm interested to see what the atmosphere is like. I'm interested to see these like I feel like both teams kind of had a bullying situation last week with their opponents, kind of a pick on somebody your own size type of fight this weekend or game this weekend. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and for any Missouri fans coming into town, if you are coming down I-70, go around Topeka. That Topeka's is all torn up. They had a bridge
Sweet,
collapse.
that's where we're staying Friday night.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a mess. Congratulations on staying in Topeka. But, Gabe, you won't recognize Manhattan. I mean, it's unbelievable how this city's changed.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting back there, seeing you and a bunch of people that I used to be friends with that I haven't talked to for 11 years. So
you're still my friend.
All right, Tim.
Even though you're
it,
quite
man.
literally a rival.
I hope you're doing well. Hope you're feeling well, and look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Thank you, buddy. Nice to meet you.
All right, man.
Nice to meet you.
Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. Appreciate him joining us. And Fitz and I go way back to probably 2003 when I started doing this thing, and Missouri was in a conference. A little different view of me here. We had a little technical hiccup there. I don't know what happened. My camera decided it wasn't going to work for a little while, so we're back on this camera, and do want to remind you, call your attention to that banner going across the bottom of the screen before Jarod and I start to answer your questions and kind of finish up talking about this matchup. James Carlton, State Farm. I talked to James earlier this week. He is very excited for this game. Big Mizzou fan, PowerMizzou subscriber, supporter of the program. So all we ask you guys is, hey, if you got insurance things going on, if you think maybe you could get a better rate, just give James the first shot. You don't necessarily have to go with him, but call him, give him a shot. Maybe he can save you a little bit of money. Maybe he can kind of explain to you, what you're paying for and where your insurance could be better. And maybe you guys maybe you can call and he can talk about Brady Cook against King Felix in the K-State defense. I'm sure James would enjoy that as well. If you get a quote from him, he's going to donate $20 to Mizzou's NIL Collective. And you just got to tell him that you heard about him here on Power Mizzou. So I don't know, Jarod, this is almost like you summed it up pretty well there at the end. Last week was, okay, each team just warms up. I don't think each team showed much of anything offensively or defensively. And now this is, this, you don't want to say it's a make or break game for the season because they can still have a good season if they don't win this game. But things look different for the team that comes out of Saturday with the win, don't you think?
I think we talked about this not too long ago. I can't remember if we were doing the show, if it was just off screen, but we were talking about which one's more important, winning versus Kansas State or winning versus Auburn. Obviously, being in the SEC, you want the Auburn win more. But to me, when I think about which is the better team in their conference and which one is expected to make more noise, I'm thinking Kansas State. So if you get this Kansas State win, like I said, it's kind of matching up yourself against somebody your own size. I'll have a little bit more confidence if they can get this win versus Kansas State. I mean, we know it's the Big 12 and all that stuff, but that's still a team expected to compete with that offensive line, with that, defensive talent, things like that. So I'm interested to see what they can really do versus someone their size.
Yeah, Kansas State gets this win. They got a chance to jump into the top 25. This is going to be a game where one team comes out crowing about their conference and how the other one's terrible. And I think that's a ridiculous storyline, but it is fun. There's some history between these teams, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And Case, the first question, we're just going to kind of roll through your guys' questions and comments. Case's first question is, what is the outlook going forward if Mizzou wins this game? And I had some people ask me, hey, did your opinion of the season change after the Louisiana Tech game? And it really didn't for me because, they did maybe a little more than we thought they'd do, but they did what they should have done. This is the first one where if they win this game, I picked this to be a loss. I probably will still pick this to be a loss this week. So if they win this game, I do think that kind of changes my opinion of what they can do from here.
I agree. The only thing that changed, like what you said about beating La Tech, was I was thinking they weren't going to cover that big spread, and they did. And when you think about it, the score should have been 52-10 at the least. Those two big you wipe away the one-play touchdowns or the miscommunications. It could have been a lot worse. Missouri could have made points of their own out of those possessions if they forced a couple of punts or turnovers or whatever. So it showed me okay, they're not letting group of five teams kind of like in the past, how they're letting SEMO or what is it, SEMO?
SEMO, yeah.
That's what you
They
guys
had
tell
Central
SEMO.
Michigan last
Yeah,
week. Yeah.
you're not letting those teams run all over you, even though they're overmatched. So that was like what you said, kind of what we expect, what they should be doing, but it's still a slight like, okay, we're glad you can do it. If they beat Kansas State, I think outlook going forward, well, then I think, oh, you definitely should beat Auburn. Like if you get Kansas State, I think if Kansas State is better than Auburn, you should go 4-0 to start the season. Like that's
I think
for me.
I think if you win this game, you go from the goal being 7 wins to the expectation being 7 wins. I think is where I would be. And it's interesting. I think last week was kind of the perfect game because you mentioned it in what you wrote this morning. We were talking about it walking out yesterday. It was pretty clear Eli Drinkwitz went into his press conference and he said, I'm not going to talk very nice about my team because I'm going to make them understand that nothing they did last weekend matters because we have to be better this weekend. I mean, I thought that press conference was, and look, he very well may believe it. I'm not saying he doesn't believe it, but that press conference was all about telling his team, look, you really haven't done anything that should impress anybody yet.
Yeah, don't rest on your laurels. You had the crowd behind you. It was a home game. It was Thursday night. It was a little bit different. You had the advantage and you're playing a team that's overmatched, but don't think because you're technically the number 1 run defense in the country now that that's a testament to what's going to happen every single game versus these Power 5 foes.
Yeah, I'm going to guess Missouri will be at best number 2 in the country at run defense by next week. I don't think they'll be number 1.
That's the best. That's probably the bet of the season right there.
Yeah. Cam Cameron wants to know, with the wide receiver room left pretty thin, do you think it's possible Jamarion Wayne gets switched back to offense? And, Drink kind of mentioned yesterday that they moved him when they thought that room was deep, but I don't think that's fair to the kid. He played at safety. He's been practicing at safety. I think he stays there. And they've got guys like Mekhi Miller can still play. Demarion Houston may still get healthy at some point. Basically they're down Chance Looper. And I don't want to say that doesn't matter, but it's one guy. If one guy changes where you're playing somebody, then you shouldn't have moved the guy to begin with.
Yeah, and they still, even without Looper, they're still at least 5 deep as far as, because Drink said he was comfortable with 6 guys playing regularly. So, that's a lot more than most teams. Most teams are comfortable with just maybe 4 and then going to 3 really in a tight end or something like that. So it's not that they don't have weapons. I think he's just more so talking depth-wise. I don't think they move Wayne because, like you said, that's not fair to be you're a wide receiver. We're going to switch you all season to the defense, and now they're probably not going to do that. But I think they should be fine, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they're. If they have another injury, then things get interesting, but not till then. Magic Man wants to know the status of Kai Montgomery and Travion Ford. And Kai Montgomery's hurt, and we don't really know how seriously or when he's coming back. It'll be a little bit. I wouldn't expect much of a contribution this year simply because they've got a bunch of defensive tackles. And Travion Ford, guys, I'm just going to be honest. We just don't hear his name. Like, it doesn't come up when you're talking about defensive ends. I don't think he's hurt. I think he's just got a bunch of guys ahead of him, and he's going to have to get better to pass some of those guys. There's really no more to it than that. Ryan wants to know, what was the word on why we didn't see any more carries from Elijah Young after the one series? We didn't really ask that specific question because, like, after a 52-24 win, I don't really think why didn't the third tailback get more run is what you asked. But I don't know. I noticed it, Jarod. I thought it was interesting. He seemed productive, and then he just wasn't really out there anymore.
Those 3 carries for 34 yards. That was all first half stats, by the way, too. I don't think he recorded another rush after that. So I don't know. You're right. We couldn't really ask that considering both the other running backs played really well, especially Nate Peat. It'd be one thing if those guys were struggling in the second half, and it's still like, why didn't you do something? But I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit different this weekend, but you're right. It's just something we were necessarily thinking of, I guess.
Yeah. It'll be. I think Nate Peat leads the team in carries this week. We're supposed to get to talk to him tonight, and I asked Drinkwitz, hey, was he limited last week? And he just kind of danced around and didn't really answer the question. So I assume he was a little bit limited. But we'll see how he goes this week. These next 2 questions are perfect, like, summation of the internet because they're direct opposite questions. First one, if the offense under Cook stalls, what are the chances we see Luther Burden operating the offense like Lynn Bowden did for Kentucky? Jarod, do you want to take that one?
0.
I mean, I'm just gonna say the chances are very, very bad. Yeah.
It's 0.
Yeah.
Like I know we joked about him being third string
Yeah.
ahead of Horn and Macon,
Make
but for one, playing quarterback is not easy. For two, he already has his own job to do, and you brought in Jack Abraham for a reason. So
right.
I mean, that's just 3. I could give like 12. But
Well, one you didn't mention, quarterbacks do still have to be able to throw the ball. And we don't really have any proof Luther can do that effectively. And look, I get it. You want to get the ball in his hands a lot. Using the Wildcat, I like that for a couple plays. It's not an every down offense, guys. Mark Stoops did it out of desperation, and credit to him, he did a great job with it, with a really good defense and a really good running game around him. That's not going to happen. Brady Cook is going to get every shot to be this team's starting quarterback. And if for some reason they go somewhere else, it's going to be Jack Abraham, at least for the first half of the season. And then once you get into the second half, who knows? So then the other side of this is why are some people overreacting about Cook? Did they expect him to be a Heisman candidate? And I don't know. I mean, Brady Cook was fine last week, I thought. I didn't think he was great, but he certainly wasn't bad.
I don't think people expected him to be a Heisman candidate, but when you have someone, when you know you want a certain person to play, if that other person doesn't reach these super expectations or something, you may think like, oh, well, such and such could have did that. Like I literally seen people saying, well, couldn't Sam Horn do the exact same thing in this one? And there's just different factors that go into it. So, I mean, like you said, he played well. This will be a big test considering this defense is something that Drink admitted he hasn't really seen much of. They probably won't see much of after this game. So if he cannot get confused by the looks that this 3-3-5 nickel brings, then he should be fine.
Well, I'm going to be interested to see how Missouri chooses to attack it because last year against Tennessee, Missouri ran a 3-3-5 defense. Now, they'd never run it before. They put it in for that week. They had defensive end Jatorian Hansford at middle linebacker. I mean, Tennessee just shredded it. They ran for like legitimately 400 yards against it.
Missouri I think put this defense in?
Missouri put that defense in for that week. It did not. We didn't talk to Steve Wilkes for like 3 weeks after that. And when we finally did, I asked him something about like why Jatorian Hansford was the guy he put in the middle. And it had been like a month ago. And he talked about how I made him sick to his stomach by asking him the question. But I don't know what happened that week. And look, I think Kansas State is probably better at the 3-3-5 with a couple years of practice than Missouri was with like 4 days of practice. But my point is, they saw that style of defense get shredded up close. So I'm curious now with Drinkwitz as an offensive play caller, what he thinks is going to work against this style of defense, and I don't know. I don't pretend to be a strategist and know what the best thing to attack this particular scheme is, but having seen it, I wonder what Drinkwitz has for it.
I think based off, I watched back some of that South Dakota game that Kansas State just played, and I noticed that they were going to the flats a lot. When you got 5 defensive backs, they're going to be trying to drop back in coverage, and hopefully that 3-man rush can get in. So throwing to the flats, South Dakota didn't do it, execute it well because they were dropping passes and, getting pressured. But obviously Missouri is much more talented than that, so they should be able to do that. And maybe we see, Elijah Young get more touches in that type of game, swing pass type of games, or maybe we start seeing the screens more and the jet sweeps and stuff like that this game. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's been 11 years since I've been to Manhattan, and there is at least some history. I like having a Power 5 opponent in week 2. Like when Missouri used to be in the Big 12, it was just 4 blood donors the first 4 weeks of the season. You didn't even feel like the season started until October. This is a big time game that I think could have a lot to do with the rest of the season. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm with Tim, man. I love the 11 a.m. games. I don't know about you, but that's when Missouri would kick off at 9 a.m. every Saturday if it was up to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. If I can be done and the sun is still out, that's perfect to me. Perfect.
Longer to get the work done, have dinner at home, watch some football. That's perfect. But I think 9 a.m. kickoff does not happen, but we're looking forward to it, guys. We got interviews this afternoon at 5:30. Jarod's going to have a story tomorrow. Then we'll have the full breakdown on Friday morning. We're going to Raytown tomorrow for Logan Reichert. We'll be back on here hopefully tomorrow afternoon. So busy week. Appreciate you all joining us, and do want to remind you one more time on the way out the door that for all your insurance needs, you want to get in touch with James Carlton in St. Louis, Missouri. He can take care of you in the state of Missouri, in the state of Illinois. He's got a team of 8, and breaking news, if you call James or his team, you're going to get an actual human being. They don't do voicemail. They don't put you through the automated menu. You're actually going to talk to a person. When you talk to that person, mention PowerMizzou, tell them you heard about it here. They're going to donate $20 to Mizzou's NIL collective. And if everything works out, they're also going to get you a better deal on your insurance. So get in touch with James Carlton there. 314-961-4800 is the phone number. carltoninsurance.net is the website. You can do Facebook as well, or like you're on the internet watching this, guys, just Google James Carlton State Farm. I'm sure you can find the contact information. So I don't know, before we get out the door, Jarod, any parting shots, anything we missed?
No, all I can say is Manhattan food recommendations. Can I get that? Can I get that? Kansas City, Topeka, all of that. I haven't been to Kansas since 2009, so I need to know what you guys are eating, and also that feature tomorrow. It's going to have to do a lot with King Felix, so stay tuned for that.
There you go. So there you have it. Executive decision has been made. There will be Kansas City barbecue eaten on Thursday. After that, we will see what happens. But appreciate you guys joining us. Again, we'll be back right about 24 hours, a little more, from Raytown High School tomorrow. See you here, and everything on the site till then. See you.